I'm going to show you exactly how a professional producer, me, makes a progressive house song in Ableton. Now I'm going to do my best to use only Ableton stock plugins, and if I do use a third-party plugin, I'll give you a version that you can do in Ableton, and that way you don't need all this fancy stuff to follow along. You can just open up Ableton, or honestly any DAW. You can use Logic or FL Studio as well, and make your own progressive house song. And once you get the basic formula down, it is so much easier to bring your ideas to life, and it's actually really simple. And just as a quick disclaimer, in my mind, progressive house is basically 4-on-the-floor kick drum with a cool melodic plucky synth, some strong bass, and just ultimately like beautiful and uplifting sounding house music. So that being said, let me show you how to make it. All right, so we got a brand new session of Ableton open. Okay, first thing we're gonna do is just click new live set. So we got a brand new session here, and I wanna set the BPM up here to the left, probably to like 125 by just clicking and dragging, or you can use the arrow keys. Normally progressive house is like 128, but for no good reason, I'm just feeling 125 today. Now let's go ahead and start with a kick. I'm gonna go ahead and use Splice for my drums, but if you don't have Splice, just go to drums here in Ableton, and then up here where it says drum hits, click on the little triangle and go to kick, and you can look through these kicks. When you find one you like, just click and drag it onto a track, and you can hover the mouse in the gray area here and just click and drag to zoom in and out. I'm gonna go ahead and use this kick from Splice, and I'm gonna zoom in and I'm gonna shorten it a little bit just by clicking on the edge and dragging in, and then also shortening it by using these little faders on the edge here. I like my kicks to be a little bit shorter. Other people like them longer, but I like them short because it makes room for the bass. Now I'm just gonna highlight one full beat here and press Command D to duplicate, and now we got these kicks. I can highlight that whole section and duplicate that, and now we've got a whole bar of kicks here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Great. Now here's a quick tip. A lot of times the Ableton default setting will make it so that when you drag a sample in, it auto fades the clip edge here. So it'll mess up the transient on your kick. It'll get rid of the little click in the beginning. And to change that setting, just press Command, comma, and go to Record Warp Launch here, and then create fades on clip edges. Just make sure that that is ticked gray so it's off. Okay, next up, let's get a clap going. I'm just gonna press Command T, and we're gonna make a brand new track. I'm gonna go back into Splice and look up clap. Ooh, first one's pretty nice. Let's go ahead and use that. I'm gonna click and press Command E to slice, so we can just trim this thing down, and just deleting the excess by pressing delete. And we can get really precise with where we're dragging it if we just hold Command while we drag. There we go. That's a bit too long. I'm just going to shorten it down. And I actually want to try to add one more layer to this. First, I'm going to turn it down by clicking on the volume over here to the right where it says 0 and just using the arrow keys. Great. I'm going to go back into Splice, see what we got in terms of claps. I like this one because it's got some cool stereo stuff going on. And I'm just going to move it like this so we get kind of a more human feel. It's not so robotic. Nice. I'm going to shorten it down a bit and turn it down. Great. Now I'm just going to highlight these claps and press Command D to duplicate. Let's double check it. Nice, that sounds great. Last but not least, let's get some hi-hats going. Once again, Command T is to make a new track. That is a pretty darn good hi-hat, but it's in the form of a loop, and I just want to use one part of it. So I'm going to delete all the before, all the after, and shorten it down a bit. Wow, it's super loud. I'm just going to turn it down to the right here. And I want the tail to be a little bit longer. The sample has this weird like little clicky thing right here. So instead, I'm just gonna add a little bit of reverb to this track. I'm gonna go to Audio Effects, go down to Reverb. Let's look in Room, and we will drag a drums room onto it, and then we'll just play with a dry wet. There we go, just something real subtle. Let's duplicate that. Nice, we could probably turn it up a little bit more. And I'm gonna shrink these a little bit so we can see everything. Great, let's press Command S and save it. We should have started by saving because it's easy to forget as referenced here, but I'm gonna save this into my sessions folder, which is on an external hard drive. And that folder is a Dropbox folder. So everything I'm doing on here as I'm saving is being uploaded to the cloud. That way I don't lose anything. Prog House Demo, and just click save, and then file, collect all and save. Make sure they're all yellow and then press OK. And that's just gonna make sure all these samples are saved within the project folder. All right, we've got some drums. Now it's time for some bass. I'm gonna press Command Shift T, and that's gonna make a new MIDI track. So we have some options here. We can either use Ableton stuff, like we can go to simpler here and go to bass and just drag on something like JX chorus bass and play some notes. Make sure that the little keyboard in the upper right is yellow right here. And that'll make it so your computer keyboard is a MIDI keyboard. And then you can use the Z and X keys to go up and down octaves. We can also play with the sustain and the decay. to get some cool shapes. I'm gonna go ahead and highlight this whole section that we have here and press Command-Shift-M, and that's gonna make a brand new MIDI track so we can draw in some notes. If I double click on the MIDI track, it's gonna open up the piano roll, and I can hover to the left of the keys here and click and drag to get the piano size exactly how I like it. Lastly, we can click on this little headphone icon right here. That'll make it so we can hear the notes when we click on them. Now I'm just gonna draw in a basic pattern. All right, I actually want this to be longer. So first I'm gonna highlight the drums and duplicate those, Command-D. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna highlight the full length of what I want the section to be and press Command-J, and that's just gonna consolidate it all into one clip here. And now I can draw in the notes that I want. Actually, let's have that last note go here. Great. So as you can hear, there's a bit of clipping, getting some audible distortion when the kick is playing and the bass are playing at the same time. Easiest way to deal with this is just to sidechain it. Let's go to Audio Effects, go up here to Compressor and drag the compressor onto the bass track. Click on this little arrow here to expand things. Then we'll click on Sidechain and we're gonna route this to the kick. Now we're gonna click on EQ here so it's grayed out, ratio all the way up, attack all the way down. And then we can click on this blue line and drag down to play with the threshold. I like to click on this bent line here so we can get this view. And now listen. So what this is doing if we solo the bass is every time the kick is playing, it's making the bass quieter. You can hear it kind of ducking in volume as the kick plays. And what this does is makes enough room for the kick and the bass to work well together in the mix. Another way to do this is with the LFO tool plugin, and that one looks just like this. LFO tool made by Xfer. And what I like about this one is you can get really precise and duck the bass out exactly when the kick is playing. And a pro tip, if you have this one, just go to the dot in the upper right hand corner and just drag that to the left ever so slightly. Otherwise you'll get a repeating clicking sound. All right, let's listen now. All right, my kick seems a little intense, so I'm gonna look at some other options here in Splice. All right, I put in a new kick. I like this one a lot better. And honestly, as far as drums go, especially for electronic music, Oliver is the best when it comes to samples. I will say there are some people who make samples that are as good as Oliver, but nobody who makes them better. All right, so now that we've got some bass going, I want to go ahead and EQ this bass. We'll throw an EQ 8 onto this bass track and just boost the low end a little bit. I'm just dragging that one up, kind of boosting everything below 100 hertz. Now, real quickly, I'm going to mention something. On my master channel, I have a plugin called Pro L2, and I have it on the Practically Clipping preset. I usually put it on my E2E limiter, which is a custom preset I made, and these are the settings. You can just copy them if you have that plugin, but it's a good idea to want to put like a limiter or some kind of clipper on the master so it doesn't go above 0. But at the end of the day, as long as you're not audibly clipping and distorting, you should be fine, at least in this stage of the process. I just like to start with a limiter on there. I'm going to turn that hi-hat down a little bit. Okay, so we've got some good bass going. Next up, we need to start thinking about mids. Now for mids, I'm going to use Serum, but if you don't have Serum, Ableton has a bunch of options. Press Command-Shift-T to make a new MIDI track, and then I'm actually going to copy this bass MIDI right here and paste that right onto our new MIDI track, and then I'm going to drag Serum onto that MIDI track as well, and I have some great presets I got from Splice for progressive house. Now for me, one of the trademarks of progressive house is this plucky synth sound with a filter that's opening and closing to create dynamics. Now let me go ahead and expand these notes into some chords, and I can show you exactly what I'm talking about. Oh, that's sick. Oh, that's actually kind of sick. I made this chord major on accident, but I actually like the way it sounds, so I'm gonna leave it. Now let's see what the bass and the mid sound like together. I'm gonna go ahead and copy this LFO tool. Just click on it and press Command-C, and we'll go to our synth track, and we'll paste it onto that with Command-V. Now let's listen to the drums and everything together. That sounds epic already. Let me tell you, sidechaining goes such a long way. And if you don't have LFO tool, just use the compressor and do it the other way that I showed you. But for progressive house, that sidechaining ducking sound is completely essential. Real quick, if you're enjoying the video at all, I would genuinely love if you would consider subscribing and giving me the chance to help you make the best music that you're capable of. After all, it's exactly what my goal is, so just consider subscribing. Okay, back to the video. Now what I want to do is add some sort of ARP. I'm going to press Command-Shift-T to make a new MIDI track. I'll copy these chords that we made and paste them onto the new MIDI track, and I'm going to use Sylenth for an ARP. Now if you don't have Sylenth, you don't have all these synths, all these third-party plugins, just use Ableton and you can draw some notes in to sort of make your own ARP. Sorry, I was just testing something out. All right, actually, I just did a little bit of research. You can totally make your own ARP in Ableton. The reason I never do it is because I've just been using Sylenth forever. But under the Instruments tab, under Drift, we have something called Mouse ARP. And if we drag that onto our chords, onto this new MIDI track that we created, it sounds like this. But here under MIDI effects, under Arpeggiator, we have all these different Arpeggiator options. So we can try dragging classic up and down right before Mouse ARP here, and then make sure our Mouse ARP is set to open. Let's see what that sounds like. All right, we can increase the rate here. Yeah. All right, let's make the whole thing higher. So I'm just gonna double click on the MIDI clip. That's gonna show our piano roll down here. I'm gonna click anywhere in this piano roll area, press Command A to highlight all the notes, and hold Shift and press the up arrow. That's gonna move everything up an octave. Now what I'm going to do is highlight some of these notes, hold Shift and press up. This is going to make more of the notes overlap. This is kind of a cool way to play with that ARP function. And I'm just adjusting the notes, seeing what sounds cool. Whoa. So I'm going to continue to play with these notes until I get something I think sounds good. I'm also going to adjust the delay, volume. Can I? Actually, I don't know if I can adjust the delay. All right, so I've switched the sound to this synthetic flute sound, and I'm just tweaking some parameters. Let's make sure to paste our LFO tool right onto that flute sound. Wow, not gonna lie. I'm actually pretty impressed with how good this sounds. This is just a stock Ableton sound. And I put this little MIDI effect on it. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is kind of structure it out a bit. This is kind of where I want the song to end up with this type of feel, but we have to build into that. So I'm not gonna make an intro. It's gonna take too long. Let's add some effects because we've got drums, bass, mids, and if we were working with vocals, there would be a vocal in there, but we're just doing an instrumental for now. And then the last thing is effects. So we definitely wanna use a sweep. Cashmere makes a great sweep, so I can honestly just drag and drop a Cashmere sweep in here and line it up where we want it and turn it down a ton. I'm going to press Command T, and we can also add in some sort of impact. I use this white noise impact on almost every song. MDL underscore transition underscore effect underscore white noise. It's just the goat for this type of stuff. Cashmere effect is a little bit intense, but I'm going to kind of play with this a bit. I'm going to go ahead and EQ this, just scoop out the lows. We also want to add our sidechaining to that white noise, but we can make it a little bit less intense. All right, now here comes kind of like the secret sauce, the true secret sauce of progressive house, in my opinion, and that is automation. First thing we're going to do is turn off all the sidechaining until the drums come in. So how we're going to do that, first we're going to enable automation view. Click on this little slanted line to the upper right, and then we're going to click on the on-off switch on the LFO tool here, which is our sidechaining plugin. If you're using a compressor, you just click on the same thing on the compressor, and you can see that a dotted line appears right on top of our bass track right here. And now we can automate the sidechain to turn on right when the drums come in, which is right here. I'm just going to go ahead and do that with all the other LFO tools, just by clicking on what we want to change, so it pops up on the track. There we go. So now there's no sidechaining before. So if I solo our bass and mids, you can really hear it clearly. Next thing I'm going to want to do is I want to automate this decay on the bass. So let's solo the bass and listen to what we have. That's right about where I want it to be for the drop, which is right here, this section. Before that, I want the bass to take up even more room. So I can just click and drag, and create these dots, and adjust it exactly how I want it. Okay, cool. Now that's sounding really good, almost exactly how I want it, but it's just a bit too loud. So all I'm gonna do is go to audio effects here. I'm gonna drag a utility right at the end of this bass track. I'm going to turn the gain down by about 3 dB. Maybe we'll do 4 dB. And then I'm gonna automate this utility to turn off when the drop starts. What that's gonna do is make it seem like the bass gets louder when the drop comes in, because that's exactly what it's doing. It's turning everything down before the drop by 4 dB. And then when the drop comes in, everything kind of gets a little bit louder. I'm actually gonna adjust it a little bit more, probably turn it down like 6 dB. So it really sounds like it gets louder when the drop comes in. Okay, next up, let's automate this plucky synth. I'm gonna go into Serum, and what I'm going to do is I'm gonna use this macro mod right here, just drag it onto the cutoff, and also drag it onto the decay on envelope 2. That means when we adjust this macro knob right here, we're kind of opening the synth way up, or bringing it way down. And another thing you can do is you can actually bend this automation line if you just hold Option and click and drag, just like that. Last thing I'm gonna wanna do is I'm actually gonna wanna put a compressor right onto this synth track. So if you're in Ableton, just go to Audio Effects, go to Compressor, and throw on something like a gentle squeeze or a generic compressor. And what that's gonna do is a compressor just limits a signal's dynamic range. So the loud parts are kind of squashed down and a little bit quieter, and the quieter parts are a little bit louder, and the volume is just overall more normalized. The reason I'm putting it on this is because when the filter is closed, it's really quiet, and when it's open, it's super loud. So we want to kind of normalize that range. I'm going to drag on Pro C2 just because I love this compressor. I'm going to drag it before the LFO tool. So it goes synth, compressor, sidechaining. And you know, I get some comments that are like, the LFO tool is not sidechaining. Sidechaining is linking a compressor to another sound. That makes it duck in volume. Whatever, I don't really care about the exact vocabulary and all that stuff. I just want to make music that sounds good, and the LFO tool does this sidechaining effect. That sounds awesome. All right, another thing I'm gonna do is copy this utility here from our bass track and paste that onto our synth track, but I don't want it to turn down 6 dB, that's a bit much. So I'm just gonna adjust this with the arrow keys, maybe do 3 dB. I also think for this bass sound, I don't really need the automation on that decay. It can all just kind of stay the same. Okay, last but not least, we have this dope ARP. So what I want to adjust, I want to automate this filter cutoff. I'll have that go down a bit here. We'll have it get really big, like sweeping into the drop, and then when the drop comes in, it's gonna get real small. Actually, I want it to stay open, but I want the sound to be shorter, so I'm gonna just automate this decay here. I'm gonna go ahead and copy that compressor from our synth and just paste it onto this sound as well. All right, I'm also gonna copy this utility from our synth and paste that too. And that's just having it duck in volume before the drop. And if we wanna see the automation, we can also just click here. Right on our track, there's these 2 downward arrows, and we can click on the plugin that we're using, which is utility, and the parameter that's changing, which is device on and off. So you can see the device is on here, and when the device is on, it's turning the sound down 3 dB. You can see that down here to the right, and then it turns off for the chorus, which makes it sound 3 dB louder. Now I realize that was a lot of nitty-gritty stuff, but let's take a listen and see how it sounds now. You know what we could do? We could even make this filter cut out a little bit more right on the drop. I think that would sound really cool. Yeah, like that. And then maybe have like the reverb go down a little bit too, so it's shorter. So it's more like a dry plucky. Oh, we can also turn the reverb dry wet up so it gets all washed out. Hey! And we can have this repeat. And we can have these kicks turned down here. I just press Command J to consolidate them. Turn automation view off, just to adjust this. And let's turn this guy down. Nice. And we can play with a bunch of different parameters. We can have this ARP go a different direction. I would really encourage you to just explore and play with sounds and just try stuff. All right, I'm just gonna add one more little effect, which is this kind of plucky noise that I've pitched down to be in the right key. And I'm just gonna put some reverb on that. And I'm gonna put some overdrive before the reverb. And then I'm going to filter that. You can use Ableton EQ. I'm just gonna use Pro Q. And on this sound, I'm gonna put a little sidechain action. Nice. You know, that's just an idea. Something to add kind of a cool tonal effect to it. I'm also gonna compress that noise. Alrighty, so I've been working on this for 52 minutes, and that's just to show you that you can come up with something that sounds really cool in a really short amount of time. Now let me show you the final product of using the formula with drums, bass, mids, vocals, and effects. Of course, without the vocals, but we could just as easily build this around a vocal or write our own song to it. Here's what we got. So yeah, this is a quick example. I wonder if I have an acapella I can drag in just to demonstrate it with some vocals. Is this like in a totally different key? I had a dream. I had a Okay, real quickly, I've just added a vocal so you can see what it would sound like with a vocal added. This is the vocal from my song Dream under my artist project, John Balaya.
I had a dream, had enough, yeah, I said before that I had enough. Setting down the dog, cause my body gonna give me what I want, yeah. But you came along and you gave me more than I could long for. I never wanted to wake up. I had a dream, you said you love me. I had a dream, you said you love me.
Here it goes. Obviously it sounded a little bit weird because it's in a different key than the acapella, so I had to pitch the acapella down, but you get the point. Really, with progressive house, you just want to make sure you utilize automation to create those dynamics with the synths. You want good clean drums with good transients, but basically this should be a pretty effective and simple rundown for how you can do something very similar to this in Ableton. Even if you don't have all these fancy plugins, the Ableton stock stuff can get you a really long way, and we could even take this Serum sound and swap that out for an Ableton sound. I just adjusted some of the automation. Now we have something like this.
But you came along and you gave me more than I could long for. I never wanted to wake up. I had a dream, you said you love me.
Sounds sick! Even without the vocal? Anyway, the possibilities are seemingly endless. Seriously, so no excuses. I know that you probably have Ableton, or maybe you have Logic, same deal. It's got enough stock sounds for you to make something incredible. The best way to make something incredible is to start right now. That's why my tagline is to stop making excuses and to start making music. Some of you guys are totally content just watching me make some songs in front of you on YouTube, but some of you guys actually want to make the music, you want to jump into the arena, and you want to get what's in your head to come out of a pair of speakers. And for those of you who want to go above and beyond, I have a paid program called Complete Producer Pro, and that's going to show you all the fundamentals of making music, from music theory to songwriting to production, mixing, and mastering. And with that program, I have a private community where I can listen to your music, break down your projects, show you how I think that you can improve. So you have all the educational content as well as the mentorship. And if you want to make your own songs from start to finish, then this program is going to save you years of learning time. This would have been a godsend for me back in the day. If that sounds interesting to you, I'll put part of the course in the description of the video for free, so you can check that out right down there. Thanks so much for watching. Seriously, it means a lot to me. And more than anything, remember to stop making excuses and start making music. Cheers.